Of course, dotting the I's and of course crossing the T's as we speak about solutions, and of course a state of current affairs right here in the country, of course, and what exactly that it is, what the head of state actually spoke about yesterday during the state of the nation address at State House Nairobi yesterday. So start engaging us on our socials at EBN TV Kenya. That is on Facebook. Our streams are up on Facebook, YouTube, and you can as well send us your feedback through our SMS line. That is 23059. Our WhatsApp line is also working at 0740653453. Right. This morning I'm joined by Mr. Muito Mawaithi, who is a political analyst and a strategist as well. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me.
All right, thank you so much for honoring our invite.
Right.
Of course, later on, I'm scheduled to have Mr. John Kinodia, who's a governance expert. He'll be joining us in the course of this particular conversation. All right. Now, we are having this conversation at a time when President William Ruto just spoken to the nation, and he mentioned that we should focus on charting a way forward, for the nation's development. And the development transcends, election cycles and the 2 decades we have had Vision 2030. All right. Now that we have shaped our nation direction, which is approaching its horizon, and of course, hence setting the ambiguous targets through Vision 2060. That's what are some of the things that the head of state actually spoke about yesterday, and I'm pretty sure that you are privy, Mr. Muito Mawaithi, to some of the sentiments he shared to the nation, but he was comparing Asia to tigers, and who transformed the economies into prosperous, high-income, competitive nations. They expanded their imports, they attracted investments, they have other nations fulfilled their potential, and we've seen we seem to be lagging behind. One then asks Mr. Muito Mawaithi, why is this, and how can we get it right at this time actually, when the head of state is actually speaking about the Vision 2060?
First of all, I wish to congratulate all Kenyans who have been put a keen eye on what and did a keen analysis also on what the president's speech was all about yesterday. I think the timing was not right, especially now that we are heading towards an election, because however nice or sweet these things sound, having been characterized as a man of too many promises, now these are just excessive promises. Leaving that, we had Vision 2030. Vision 2030 was actually aligning this country's development plan, both economic and social and political. They were supposed to help every country to rise to the occasion by using the template that had been provided by the United Nations. So the government of Kenya sat down that time during the reign of Mwai Kibaki and came up with a blueprint plan that was to last, to take us up to 2030. And coincidentally, the current president was then in the president's cabinet, the then government's cabinet. So whatever plans that were hatched for Vision 2030, I think he had actually contributed, either as a CS Minister for Agriculture, or what he later adopted as Minister for Higher Education. Now, having been in cabinet where all this is being cooked, Kenyans of our times, those who were there when the government was doing these things and presenting that development plan, we would have expected an audit report on this is what we had laid as a blueprint for Vision 2030, and this is the far we have come. But the person to explain this, our president knows too well that he was not in a position to explain that audit report easily, because he knew that his party to what has actually failed the 2030 Vision 2030. The former regime, which he was also party to for 10 years as deputy president, an influential position, together with the then president, what big mistake they did is first quash or kind of stalled all systems that had been put in place by His Excellency Mwai Kibaki, because the late Mwai Kibaki had put up a system where every ministry would actually have its own Vision 2030 plan. And that is how it was. When we go to agriculture, they knew how it was supposed to be. If we go to education, they knew it was supposed to be free up to tertiary education. Today, even primary itself, under the current president, is in ruins. Even the capitation money does not even meet the agreed, the stipulated figures, you know, and also does not arrive in time. It has made education one of the most expensive things. So that's what I'm saying. He loses the locus standi to explain the Vision 2030, having ruined one, education. The other day, he introduced scholarships for university students after crippling HELB itself with the banding method. You know, the banding method, whoever advised him about it and he took it up, messed him up. You understand? Because the buck stops at the leader. When you talk about the health sector, free health, free maternity was actually within the Vision 2030 during Kibaki's reign. But luckily, Uhuru Kenyatta was able to continue with some of these projects that were some of these plans that had been initiated, and that's how come he came up with the Linda Mama to make it so free when it comes to maternal, and that's how you deal with issues. Sort one issue, maliza. Kibaki knew too well that even if you have a hospital in the bush, you need a road that takes you there. You know. If we were to use airlines, we need to revamp our airstrips, let alone expanding the airstrips into airports, because Isiolo was just an airstrip before it was actually marked for expansion to become an international airport, so that it can be able to service the business and the commercial trade that would take place from the Mount Kenya region. Hopefully, he had started doing roads heading towards Marsabit on these other areas. So he knew that if he opens Marsabit and the Isiolo airport is right here, while they were doing transformations in agriculture, first it was psychological. You know, they knew that the moment they've done Galana Kulalu, people from Garissa will start doing farming, and maybe in large scale, because the soil is still virgin, you know, for agriculture. So these are the kind of things they were envisaging when they were doing this plan for Vision 2030. Our president sat there. So enhancing a plan that you created would have been very easy. So doing an audit yesterday would have been the key thing. So the many things that he has mentioned are actually futuristic. And that's why to overshadow anything to do with Vision 2030, which has 4 years, you can do at least 1, 2, 3 things. Let's say complete the infrastructure thing, maybe on roads, railways, and whatever. That would mean that at least we have accomplished this and that. But what happened is that, like I explained, is that we started destroying these things bit by bit by not running with the system that had already been set up. They had already set up during the Kibaki regime, the last term. Now, when you talk about health, health was heading to become free, okay? But resources were not there when they were in that regime. But by the time the exit of the third regime under Mwai Kibaki, there was some money and resources and a system that enabled a government to fund itself. So these are things that would have helped Kenya. But what did they revert to? Led by the former president, they went into borrowing, and this borrowing spree, we know about how most of them benefit from these loans, commissions and whatever, and contracts that don't make any sense. So that at least you can be able to benefit from that as an individual. So one thing is that there's a lot that was spoken. Ideally, he would have done a recap of what they have accomplished, or the former governments, including his, have accomplished on Vision 2030, so that you can be able to build upon what is there. But you cannot say we now go again into digging, foundations based on the foundations that were built by Singapore and Vietnam and the other countries, and assume that now Kenyans will now build on those bases. Yet we had a basis as a Kenyan government and a Kenyan system. That is what any leader is supposed to inherit and enhance, take it to the next level,
so
which
Mr.
is what he failed yesterday.
Where's the, one would ask, where's the missing link? Because we haven't gotten this right ever since Vision 2030 was articulated over two decades ago. Because under, the leadership of the industrialization, former CS yesterday actually said that, we saw some, actually saw some of the special economic zones being set up in various, countries. So where's the missing link, and why haven't we gotten it right till date?
Personal interests in the leadership is what has actually caused this whole plan to stall, and rather to fail. I'll give an example of a place like Mount Kenya, which I'm well conversant with. In the Vision 2030, Isiolo was to be upgraded, Isiolo Airport, into an international airport. The railway line that was to be commercial and also for cargo, passenger and cargo, was again to be extended from Nanyuki all the way to Meru and Isiolo. You understand? And it was to connect the whole of Mount Kenya and the northern part of Mount Kenya, that is Isiolo onwards to Marsabit. And all these were considered to be areas that can benefit from this infrastructure development. So the infrastructure development had already started. Okay, education. He had long started by making education free within his first term. You remember the days when we used to have even the 84-year-old gentleman who was the oldest in the world, I think, to have gone to school, Maruge. And so it is there was that excitement long before even the United Nations brought this thing in. And so the link actually broke when personal interest came in. Because like I'm saying, President Mwai Kibaki went to the energy sector, set up wind power, he set up solar power as alternatives for the national power grid, so that we don't depend fully on this thing we call the hydropower. During his reign, I think is when we did the Olkaria 3, because I think President Moi had done Olkaria 1 and 2. Now, when he did the Olkaria 3 and started the Olkaria 4, which Uhuru continued with until Olkaria 5, we were supposed to use flowing water, that is the river water, was supposed not to be used for making or producing power, according to Kibaki. It was meant to become water for agriculture, and also house utility, purposes, like cleaning, drinking, cooking, and also for feeding livestock. Now, these are the kind of plans that the third president had, and the cabinet he was discussing with. Uhuru Kenyatta was a first deputy prime minister. Okay, Musalia Mudavadi was the second deputy prime minister. Raila Odinga was in it. William Ruto was in it, but now we can't talk about Raila Odinga because he's not there. But he has been there during the time of Uhuru and Ruto, which means if they were so keen on these agendas, not for the sake of President Mwai Kibaki, but the fact that they were acceptable, I think they would have enhanced this. So when the politics of the counties came, somewhere, somehow, I tell you, there was a lot of excitement. There's a lot of money coming to individuals, I mean, in billions, and they had not trained themselves on managing the billions. So the first term was for eating the billions that had been shared to the counties. And that's why you see some counties lagging behind. Why? Because of that thing I'm attaching to, the personal interest. So you will talk about a county like maybe a county in the northern Kenya. I don't want to be specific because I know what I'm talking about when I mention northern Kenya. A county like one in northern Kenya, they would get more money than what is going to counties that are densely populated in Mount Kenya or any other region, Western Kenya. But when the money gets to them, meant for schools, because the Mahas have presented a development plan for them to receive whatever amount of money they receive. Either they had spoken about road infrastructure, schools, you know, they were to build schools because there were no schools, and many, many other things that they were supposed to use as incentives for the growth and development of their zones. What they have done is some of them sponsored their people to come and invest elsewhere. And evidently, that's how it has been run for the longest time, until you saw the uproar when there was this expose on how their money is being squandered by their leaders. So you see, the transformation of the mind ought to have taken place. Now, the small twist that the fourth regime took, or against or away from the Vision 2030 plan that they had, because like I've mentioned, they were in government, so it was easy for them to continue with the plan. Of course, Uhuru Kenyatta did not destroy everything, but he introduced the thing of, you know, borrowing. And that's why we actually came from 2 billion to 11 billion, while we had resources and a system that actually financed whatever the third regime was using from internal borrowing, you know. And that was one of President Kibaki's plan and strategy, that he was first to curtail this mentality of borrowing externally. And so when they made it personal, things went haywire.
All right. And Mr. Mwito, the president yesterday actually says that these conversations should actually rise beyond politics. And one then asks the question then, can, you know, national development matters generally be separated from politics in Kenya?
Political ideas are politically enhanced. You cannot come up with political ideas and give to the priest to implement it in the church or in the mosque or wherever. It can only be done politically, because the mind that has been employed in creating the blueprint of that whatever is political. So how do you again say that it should go beyond politics? The reality is that it is the politics that should be polished. Okay? If the Vision 2030 aimed at having a country that will be holding peaceful general elections, and they started putting structures that would actually enhance this, until recently when there were changes by Maraga, which made it even more transparent, then the likes of what happened in 2007 would not happen. That is, in terms of the internal security. Okay? Because every docket I told you, had to come up with a plan. Now, when you talk about the independence of the IEBC as an institution, which has been the reason why, which is one of the reasons why we might even not get there. You heard what the IEBC chairman is talking about, that we will dim the results, so nobody will know what is happening. That's what happened in 2007. There was no way even for the ECK chairman himself to know who has won or who hasn't won, because even the results themselves are not so clear to him. Is what has been presented to him. Now, when you shut or you try to avoid the verdict that was given in 2019, it means you're leading the country into anarchy. So how will you invite investors, being the president, and you're not cracking the whip against people who are making such careless statements? When people hear insults that are being hurled against one another, in the country. It scares them, knowing how some of them have not even forgotten what happened in 2007, losses, and they were not able to recover some of them. And those who recovered, it has become a norm that towards elections, let's shut down, or let's do whatever we want to do, but we make sure that we have guarded ourselves against losses. Now, when you have such a thing and you're introducing the vision and you have not dealt with it, you know, it's just the other day he was dealing with, he's promising to deal with goons, which are part of this police force, and him being the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. You know, when you hear these kind of things and he comes up with the promise of a country that would attract investment and the fear that is so rife, and it is actually applying because of the 2027 elections. We are talking about almost a year of fear on investors. So how do we again transform this? And if it happens like this and they begin to shift the way they're shifting their headquarters or their factories to neighboring countries, how do you intend to build this? So it just becomes a hogwash and empty rhetoric as at now. I think he would have concentrated on correcting the ills that maybe have hindered the perfect achievement of Vision 2030.
All right. And you spoke about a little bit about, you know, the issue of goonism in the country. And of course, when I listened to the speech yesterday evening, you know, the speech repeatedly emphasized on unity and shared purpose. And, you know, is Kenya politically united enough today, you know, to sustain a generational development agenda?
That's what we are looking at. That's why we're saying that if we talk of unity and the people who are causing disunity, having experienced the same thing, the same plan that was executed in 2006 towards the 2007 elections. The 2000 elections clashes or the ethnic cleansing thing that was to take place did not bind people together with a trustful friendship. It is a friendship of convenience that, yes, we are Kenyans and we must rise up and continue. Not, it did not empower what you call trust. So if he wants that, then he must cultivate on something we're calling the government-citizenry relationship. If he does not cultivate on that one, then it will be very difficult for him to move on and even accomplish anything between now and maybe if he goes up to maybe 2027, if he goes beyond by whatever means, then it means that he cannot accomplish it if this attitude is what will be carried out. The speech was so eloquently presented, very well presented. But you see, when you say what you don't mean or what you don't do, it may sound poetic, yes, but you see, nobody will even trust what you say. So if trust in what you're saying is not there, where will you obtain trust for implementation? Because you need to be trusted and your systems and your government to be trusted so that you can be able to implement these things. What guarantees is he giving? Because like I told you, the issue of goons and the misbehavior of the IEBC is actually scaring investors away. They're not blind, they can see. And losing one investor, it means there's families that are going to suffer. Now, if the family is going to suffer, it means there is no confidence and hope for tomorrow. So how again do you intend to accomplish this with that person hailing you, hail live the king, when you have caused the person to lose a source of livelihood? And that's how we're looking at it. Bring it down to a level of an individual. That's the time you realize that what he's talking about is just a speech that sounds so well from State House. So good. And I said it qualifies for a poem. Yeah.
And, you know, when you speak about these conversations, which he said that, you know, the conversation should actually, you know, start from around August 12th. Should the next national vision belong to the government of the day, or should the parliament entrench it as a binding, national commitment regardless of who occupies the State House?
The larger representation of the people to avert manipulation is parliament. And not necessarily parliamentarians, but the parliament system. The parliament itself, the way it gets down to the roots, it should be a discussion that people should actually do it. Not this time. First, the timing, like I said, is wrong. Even to suggest that we can now begin to talk about Vision 2060, because Parliament is the one that has the representation of the masses. Okay? And so if we start from Parliament, then that would be a different thing than starting from executive. So when executive champions this whole thing, and they don't make the laws that will establish this and give hope to the future regimes that come, and the citizens that will be existing when other regimes now take over, because it's a long-term dream, you must have laws put in place. But if even the laws in place are not respected, so how do you expect again to convince the same people that there is anything that is coming up that is worthwhile? So that's what I'm saying. If I was the president, this was not the time, but the speech that I would have made yesterday, I think I would have done a recap on the Vision 2030 and see how far we have come, talking about what was there in the regime of Mwai Kibaki, Uhuru Kenyatta, and now him in his ending first term.
All right.
Yeah.
And you spoke about, okay, it's a good conversation that we should have as a country, even as we chat the way forward on what, the future holds for us. But the mwananchi, the ordinary mwananchi should, would ask then, what will be new from this conversation that they haven't had before?
In leadership, first identify the needs of your people first. The cost of living is too high. Why Kenya is indebted as much as it is indebted is this kind of borrowing that is now frivolous. Everybody is offended by it, there is this extravagant expenditure of our resources meant to streamline the institutions he's talking about and the structures he's talking about. Look at the other day, blowing 1 billion shillings in Bere, you blow 1 billion shillings in Embu, Yet, the education sector for the primary school sector to be free of charge requires about 3 billion shillings a year to make it free. Just let the money flow, or 30 billion or 20 billion, whatever money that is you're supposed to spend. And you can imagine, if I'm able to plan 1 billion shillings plus 10 in Alkalao alone, how much is he planning for the 291 91 constituency seats? 47 counties, 47 women reps, over 2,900 MCAs. When you consider this, and also his presidential ambition, it means the campaign is rolling into hundreds of billions, if not $1 trillion. Now, that being the case, when Kenyans do a retrospect, that this is how you are spending our hard-earned tax money. And you're now giving us a vision that will ensure, I don't know in what pay bill or whatever account we are supposed to contribute to save some money so that it can be used to achieve a dream in 2060. I think in the wise wisdom, in the wise principle, I think what one does is to ensure that where I'm standing right now, everything is now running well. Familia inakula, rent imelipwa, nini imefanyiwa, kila kitu imefanyiwa, and life is moving smoothly. Now, when you begin to talk about the dreams, what you're imagining. You know, it doesn't work. Secondly, when you take us back to 1963 to consider ourselves, to compare ourselves with South Korea, if we lost it, we lost it. So where did we lose it? This is what you're trying to address, that our 45 tribes, our 45 ethnic communities must be equalized. And that's why we wrote in the Constitution and increased, added more money that is being shared to those counties. Now, we are really lost in this whole thing. So when we are discussing, when you're talking about Vision 2060, I think we are lost. If I've satisfied the question that you have asked, anything I've not satisfied there?
Not really. Now, Mr. Mwita Muriithi, you know, even as you have the conversation for 2060, it's okay, we're having the conversation for 2060, but how then again do we prevent, you know, this from becoming another, you know, well-written policy document that, you know, never fully translates to the people's daily lives? Take you back.
The reason why people are saying one term is because of the high cost of living.
Yeah.
Seemingly caused by the current regime within a very short time, although it had started earlier, but now taken to different levels that are unbearable. That's why people are actually having this outcry on the cost of living. Now, when you introduce them into a new discussion of Vision 2060, you are losing these people. So, vision, what I'm talking about, can you repeat the question? Something crossed my mind, that's why I was thinking like that.
I was asking, how then again do we prevent this from being a well-written policy document that actually does not translate to the daily people's life?
The only best way to do it is to ensure that whatever was promised earlier is accomplished. If we are able to improve our road infrastructure and shun this thing of the tolling system that is being introduced, such like things, when Kenyans are still suffering in the kind of economy that is so suppressive at the moment, then we would be heading somewhere. The other way to ensure that the government itself accomplishes its vision is if the promises that are made, they would be good to be discussed, but they'd be shelved. Because the only ideal time to discuss this must be after the coming 2027 elections.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And, the president, now let's talk about, the state accountability over the past. Yesterday, the president actually acknowledged that Kenya has missed several global economic opportunities, while countries like South Korea, China, and Vietnam, surged ahead. Why has Kenya, repeatedly fallen behind over the years?
Corruption is one of the things that have brought down the Kenya's economy. Right from the days of Kenyatta and rampantly during the time of Moi, when a phone call was enough to earn you 1 billion shillings or hundreds of millions from an institution established by, public money. Coming to the Kibaki regime, yes, there was some level of corruption, but at the same time, level of confidence was built in Kenyans, because it is at that time you would see people running after KRA, I want to pay taxes, because there was a confidence that was built, that was introduced by Kibaki during his reign. Come the Uhuru regime, it was a moment of enjoying everything that is stashed in our coffers. And that's why we are now suffering even beyond this. The Ruto government has not done much to salvage that. And so what I'm trying to explain here is that corruption is the key thing that has actually brought down any economic plan or any development plan that the country has had ever since.
Okay.
Especially the 24 years of President Moi really stalled everything. That's where now countries like Korea, they actually overtook us. I remember in the early 80s when what we call a pound, a 20, it was actually a 20 because it was 20 shillings was exchanging for one British pound. Okay, the dollar was just a few shillings, 16 shillings around there. Now today, as we speak, it is incomparable because of the economic hardships that are there as a result of corruption. Remember, in 1992, there was a lot of money that was printed so that Moi can suffice his re-election agenda. And so that really caused a very great inflation in this country. That is corruption by itself. Now, coming into now trying to salvage this, regimes that came around and then try to secure the situation, safeguard the situation with the meager resources that were available. The regime that came the fourth, it actually did the worst that would have been done by any regime, because it is whatever was saved for the country is what they destroyed. Okay. And now William Ruto, as the president, currently having been in the former government, they enhanced the same corruption that was there. Look at our energy sector. If power supply is cheaper in the country, industries would not fail. Production cannot fail. You know, whether it's farming, it won't fail. When you have this machine input in farming, then it means higher production. But when we are depending on electric power, and the electric power has got something we call we're using hydroelectric power, yet we have geothermal power, we have solar power, we have the wind power, and we are not using them as alternative power source and introduce them into the grid. A blackout like what took place yesterday, we are not supposed to be experiencing blackouts in any way in this country. And that is why you're seeing that corruption itself is taking us very far. Why? Because they are individuals, and that includes even the first families, owning power generators. You're generating power using oil as the fuel, yet we want to get out of that, because we are talking about whatever the climate change and also the emission of this bad gas into the atmosphere. There you are again still producing or emphasizing that we must continue producing power using the same fuel. We are supposed to have gone to the alternative: geothermal, wind power, and solar. That's what we are supposed to have actually included entered into a power grid.
Okay, pretty much. I want us to take a short breather right here on the leadership challenge. We'll be back in just a bit. Don't go too far.
Yeah. Good morning.
Watching the Leadership Challenge show with me, Martin Macharia. Of course, we are having a conversation, or we are conversing all the nitty-gritties into details, and of course, dotting the I's and crossing the T's, even as we speak matters solutions. Of course, yesterday the head of state actually, gave an address at State House Nairobi, about conversation that he said that is necessary for the country, which he said, should actually start around, August 12th. beyond Vision 2030. That's a conversation we're having this morning. And of course, is it a new national dream or another political promise? All right, and joining me in studio for that particular conversation, we were earlier with Mr. Muito Mureithi, who's a governance, a political analyst and a strategist as well. And I'm joined by Mr. John Kinothia, who's a governance expert. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
And many thanks for, of course, making time honoring our invite this morning.
By all means.
All right. Now, Mr. John, I want to pick your mind on, what the head of state actually addressed yesterday. And of course, the president has described this as the most consequential national, conversation since the year 2010 constitution. And one asks the question then, is this truly a conversation or a turning point, or is the country being invited to another, long-term conversation while immediate challenges remain unresolved?
Let's start from that last one. It is certainly the country being invited into long-term conversations, while there are so many short-term problems. I found it hypocritical, to be frank, because on one side, it totally ignores everything that is not working. It is the same day that you see health workers on strike. It is the same day that you see so many departments not being able to pay not only salaries, but even contractors and people who've provided services to the government. Instead of stopping the bleeding, he's telling us of, doing neural surgery on a patient that looks okay. Stabilize a patient who's going to ICU before you start talking of neurosurgery for a minor issue. It looked like a political ploy, to be frank. That's another angle. Unfortunately, this particular president is known for all kinds of ploys where he's already calculated an end game. Usually that end game has financial or other benefits to him personally and his cronies. So you see just another scheme. And I think the president has become tone deaf to how, unsatisfied, how fed up, how just totally, out of touch he is with the citizens of Kenya. People have so many challenges. People can't put food on the table. People can't take children to school. People cannot have services provided at medical facilities. Medical practitioners are on strike because they are not being paid as is appropriate. So many things are not working, and then he's telling us about 2060 when 2026 we have enough challenges of ourselves. So I saw a president, unfortunately, who was out of touch. I saw a president who was tone deaf to what is really ailing Kenyans, and I saw a president who consistent with what he's become known for, just being a schemer, and he's telling people all these grand things, and he seems unable to reconcile the fact that people are simply unhappy with the incompetence with which the government is being led. Now, there's another angle where you could say it is a distraction, so that there are so many issues that are going on, and instead of having those conversations, now he wants to create a distraction with a whole new, set of parameters for the future that nobody has asked. I found it odd. He's saying that this process will feature public participation, yet we see no public participation. We hear, he's asked a Japanese expert and a governor. He says the government will not be involved, but the people will be involved, but, at the helm of it is a senior government official. So, consistent with what we've come to see with this president, there seems to be lack of integrity, and that is really unfortunate, because people are just fed up, and he's talking big dreams as if he'll be here till 2060, and the level of incompetence his government shows that they may be going home next year, and he just got a walloping in the most recent by-elections, and he should be focused on that, because a clear message was sent to people. You have people complaining about, the way the security services are working, the way the Interior Ministry is unable to control, if not the one purveying this whole culture of goonism and every other criminal act that is associated with what we saw in the last by-election. So he, instead of addressing national issues, there are many people who believed he was going to fire his CS for Interior, Kipchumba Murkomen, who is his friend and crony, and he always delivers consistent with what people have come to expect on film. So I'm sorry to say that, that speech, I was talking, a Gen Z texted me, and they were simply like, I don't know what this guy is talking about, and I really laughed, you know, because he's totally out of touch with what people really need to hear and the leadership that he needs to show. He's always out there scheming and doing deals, but we don't need that kind of a president. We need a president who's present, who's active, who solves problems that the country is experiencing, and who is a unifying leader, not somebody who lives in some arbitrary abstract future that nobody even knows what he's talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you spoke about the people and, you know, the speculations. Actually, I had from one of my friends actually saying that what we should expect from the head of state yesterday was actually, you know, the fate of the incumbent deputy president, Professor Kithure Kindiki.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that was not the case.
Mm.
Now, Mr. John Kinodia, you know, speaking about the people, you know, the head of state yesterday actually said that people should not, you know, view Vision 2030 as a failure.
Mm-hmm.
So, should Kenyans agree with with that particular assessment?
Well, number one, it seemed to me that he was changing goalposts, because, you know, he was saying Vision 2030 has not been accomplished, Vision 2030 is not enough, Vision 2030 does not go far enough, the Vision 2030 this, Vision 2030 that, right? People have forgotten a country, you know, a vision is supposed to quickly be translated into a mission, and a mission is supposed to quickly be translated into actionable items, actions, policies, things that actually change the lives of the people on the ground. There's a beautiful English word called pontification, which you know, essentially means somebody who's just out there giving theories, and, you know, pontificating means, you know, he's just getting all riled up about some theory or some doctrine or some other things that he's concocted. So in my opinion, you can't talk about Vision 2030 when Vision 2026, you know, people are in, you know, critical care. There's a mission critical need for good governance in this country. The president is not providing that good governance in this country. There's a mission critical need for leadership in this country. Proper, principled, solid leadership. The president is not providing that. There's a mission critical need for people to feel secure in their own homes. The president is not providing that basic need for safety and security. There are mission critical needs to balance the priorities of this country. We are out there building things that people don't need. We just saw the courts yesterday stop some construction on some forest. You know, his priorities are all over the place. And again, you see him like this person who's always out to make another deal for personal profit. And it struck me as interesting that at the same time he was delivering his speech, one of his former cabinet secretaries for the treasury, a professor no less, was in Switzerland giving a speech almost with all the points that were antidotes to what the president was saying. And he did not mince his words. He said this is a president that, you know, has essentially crippled the national institutions and made them subservient, so that he's the only one who can micromanage them, and in a way that is unhealthy to the economy. He talked about the corruption. He talked about the stealing. He talked about he being required to do that kind of stealing in his job and refusing, and the curse that follows those people. These are the things the president is supposed to be reflecting upon. He is coming up with yet another gimmick, yet another scheme, yet another, you know, policy proclamation that seems to have some angle that he's already calculated will benefit him personally. And unfortunately, the president has now become synonymous with that. Just a deal maker who's always out to make personal, private profits with his cronies. We must go away. Kenya is bigger than this one individual. Kenya is bigger than these games that he's playing. And he's tone deaf. He doesn't seem to realize just how fed up people are with that. If you look at the last by-election and compare them with the previous ones, quite a couple of them came close, like within 500 votes of each other, like the winning candidate and the runner-up, whether they were in the opposition or in his party, the gap between them was a delta of like 500 votes. The last one that we saw, we're talking about 30,000 votes, you know, a delta of 30,000 votes, where a winning candidate has 35,000 and the losing candidate has about 5,000. that's a message being sent to him, and he is the one who set the competition that was around that particular by-election by making it a referendum on whether, you know, Kenyans agree with his leadership and his party and what they have to offer, or whether they agree with the opposition. That kind of walloping should make him think twice about how he's doing things. So what I saw is the same old repetition of the same old schemes, and unfortunately he doesn't realize Kenyans are brighter than that, and the more he does, the more he does these things, the more he alienates himself against Kenyans. So we must be very direct in saying what we need is not another scheme. What we need is not another Vision 2060. What we need is not another, castle in the air. What we need is a plane that actually lands, the rubber meets the road, and Kenyans can feel the benefits of good governance. We have his cronies running around and doing all kinds of crazy things with this country's management, and Kenyans are simply tired of that. And no new gimmick is gonna, hoodwink people into believing he's doing a good job. He's failing at his job. More than 2030, the question should not be whether 2030 is a failure or not. The question is whether his presidency is a failure or not. And the more he talks, the more he acts in this direction, he just seems like a failed president who's clutching at straws. And Kenyans are brighter than that.
Pretty much. Now, Mr. Muto Moredi, we were speaking earlier about, President openly acknowledging that Kenya missed several global economic opportunities. But then again, who bears the responsibility, on missed opportunities? Past governments, institutions, or is it the country's political culture?
I think it has become more of a culture because, like I said, it's like, you see, impunity and corruption is like every regime that comes up inherits this kind of behavior. The only difference is that, like I said, now this has become inundating to the Kenyan people because we feel that now there are too many promises, there are too many policies that are laying in the ministries without implementing them. That takes it to a level of impunity that is unbearable. And you see, when things are happening like this, it means the country has no future. So when the president is trying to meet the development goals that were set earlier on, especially now localizing the MDGs into the Vision 2030, the accomplishment of Vision 2030 is what would have been his core bit of his speech that he made yesterday. And emphatically, I think I have said it again and again, that it was supposed to be a moment to do a recap of the things that were supposed to be done and how far and how much they've been able to accomplish them. If that didn't work yesterday, then it becomes another moment of sharing rigmaroles with the Kenyans, because like he has just rightly put it, personally, I was not able even to concentrate when it got to a certain point in time, because I was wondering, what is he talking about? Because I'm trying to hear him talk about the changes he's going to cause over the ills affecting the leadership of this country and what has actually caused the ruin on this economy. When he gives the examples of South Korea, Vietnam, he's not touching on areas where we failed, because if he speaks about the ills of the failure where the South Koreans overtook us, that means that he will have to talk about his king's failure, that is the former President Daniel Arap Moi in his 24-year reign, because it's at that time that the economic setback really hit Kenya. So when we look at it from that point, I think the importation of corruption and impunity has actually caused this to happen. That's why everybody is complaining. When we have an incompetent CS, maybe in the Ministry of Interiors, an incompetent CS in another ministry, and you're not cracking the whip, or even like the incompetent CS in the Ministry of Health, and you're not taking any action, The incompetence already exuded by the chairman of the IEBC, because of the relationship maybe they could be having, he's not cracking the whip. So how is he going to cause a transformation? Yeah. It's not going to be a normal thing. And that's why we are saying the people you're talking to today have access to information. I've given you an analogy. When we looked into what happened in 2007, we said access to information was not there. And it was not even as explicit to even the ECK chairman himself. He said even if he goes up to the skies, he cannot be able to tell who won. You understand? So what we are trying to say is that you're talking now to people who are informed. They can access information. We know what policy is actually catching dust in the shelves. We know what task force report is catching dust in the shelves at State House. So when you're dealing with such a community, I have always said here, if there is you don't individually choose to update your software, it will become a problem when you choose to become a leader. You want to become a leader and you want to rule in the old format, yet people are running in the new format. So while we are in this digital space, information is so easy to obtain, unlike the previous times. So that is what I'm saying. The people he's dealing with, he's trying to use the old rules in this new game, and that's not going to work for him. Okay. So he needs to shape up the president, because the buck stops at the president, so that every other person who is leading under him, when you know that whatever crime you commit in your office, it will be unpunished. If you speak the language the president will be entreated to, then that becomes a problem in leadership. And so we're hoping that the transformation, when we talk about these convictions, it is all in the mind and in one's individual spirit. There's no community heart. Okay. It is an individual heart. Okay.
Yeah. Now, Mr. John Kinothia, the speech of President William Ruto yesterday, repeatedly emphasized on unity and shared purpose. But is Kenya politically united, enough today, to sustain a generational development agenda?
Firstly, it was very ironic to hear him talking of problems that he himself has caused. Okay? He has been an instrumental part of getting us to where we are, where things are not working. Now, when he talks and compares us to some Asian countries, and talks about how we fall behind the trend, the cumulative issues that continue to, beguile our country and continue to cause problems of the kind that are making us that retardant in terms of growth and in terms of development, he is part of the problem. So instead of offering the solutions, instead of departing from his mode of governance and his style of governance and his incompetent leadership, not only himself individually, but the office of the president and the offices that surround him and the cabinet secretaries, he's not offering solutions. He's just, offering, gambits and theories and proclamations. Now, as a direct answer to your question, Kenya is not united. And he remains a divisive force in this country. When anytime there's an opportunity to bring Kenyans together, he chooses, and that's because of interests that are, like I said earlier, individual interests and corporate interests that are allied to him and his friends. They continue prioritizing those interests over the Kenyan citizens and the lives of the Kenyans and the well-being of the Kenyans and the economy of Kenya and growth of the nation. But they not only do that, but they do it at the expense of Kenya and its growth. So he doesn't seem to realize he's a major part of the problem, and he doesn't seem to realize that, the more he talks, the more people hear. So many people, like my brother here said, people just tuned out of his message, because one, he was bubbling, he was all over the place and giving, historical, record and stories that were not coherent and, were not consistent with the message he was delivering. I don't know, it's almost like that was a grafted message. He intended to do something else or say something else, and then at some point, maybe I don't know if he had his former CS's speech, which was done earlier, I suppose. in the Swiss, engagement where that former CS spoke. I don't know what caused him to give that kind of a speech, but a prime time address should be consistent, it should be coherent, it should get people together. And again, to your point, it should be a moment of national unity where the president, as the leader and as the president of the Republic of Kenya and commander-in-chief, brings people together and unifies the nation. He continues to divide the nation for his own political mileage, for his own political benefit, for his own political expediency. We saw it in the last by-election. In fact, it is the citizens who are united in rejecting him and his policies and his candidate and whatever else they stand for. And he was busy brutalizing them with his official state goons. This is somebody who should be ashamed of standing up and telling us about the future of the children of this country. He's a big part of the problem. He's not solving the problem. He's not rising up above this petty politics and cheap games that people are playing, and just he seems to be selling off the country, to be frank. And we can't have a leader or a president who's just all about that. And people are calling him out, and like I said, he's tone deaf. He's not hearing. He's incapable of receiving counsel that says, please sort the problems, the many myriad problems that are in this country. So I don't know how he gets helped. I think his only solution will be to be ejected cleanly next year. And it can happen. I see here a lot of people resigning. You saw what was shameless voter bribery, just totally rejected. People take the goodies and then just on a very large scale reject him and his policies and his candidate. So I think he needs to call himself to a meeting. He needs to call his people to a meeting, and they need to quickly regame what they're doing, because yesterday was embarrassing, really, because it showed a president who is out of touch with what is really going on in this country. It showed a president who is out of touch with the sheer incompetence that surrounds him, but most importantly, the sentiment of the Kenyan citizen who say enough is enough, we cannot have this anymore. He's up for a job interview next year, he's up for a performance appraisal, and he's doing very poorly. He doesn't seem to get it. He's talking about visions for the future, yet people are wondering, how do we even get to that future under such poor leadership? It is unfortunate, it is embarrassing. Pretty much.
Now, Mr. Milton, already speaking about future of the children of this country, we've seen a couple of reforms started by the head of state, President William Ruto. Not too long ago, he gave a proposal of tertiary funding, working away from the current financing model that has been contested, putting pressure on households and families to fork money from their pockets in order to finance, the education of young learners, whether in TVETs or universities. Now, are we working towards the right direction where we'll actualize equality and equal access to education, or especially even as we focus on the tertiary level?
One character of leadership is remaining focused. Remaining focused on your vision. Remaining focused on, like a government implementing the policies, laid down policies that are meant to benefit the people you are leading. If we talk about HELB, for example, HELB did not need to introduce a new system, a new mode of, qualifying those who, picking or setting up new criteria for picking the people, the students who are going to benefit from it, and how and to what level. All that the discrimination is something that has actually brought down the HELB. What was he supposed to do? Just increase the funding to HELB, so that if they were able to access 50,000, they can now access 100,000, 200,000. That means the parent who is seated there, although this money will be paid back, we were discussing this when the banding method was introduced, that you increase the funding and reduce the interest rate, or you make it static in such a way that even if I will begin to pay this money 5, 10 years later, it still remains, if it was 2%, it remains 2%, and that would have helped students and the parents themselves. Now, having destroyed the existing HELB and introducing that one with the banding method, and now averting that one and introducing another one that has scholarships for all students who qualify. When people have already branded you as a liar, if that system didn't work, so how do you expect us, if you kill the one that was working and introduce one that is not working and you abandoned it and you have introduced this one, how do you expect me to trust even the futuristic ideas that you have of enhancing maybe the education system itself? Taking an example of what has happened in the tertiary, how do you expect us to win trust, you to win trust, when even capitation money itself, you have not only caused it to arrive late in schools, but you have reduced it and still not getting in time. Okay. So that is killing a system, an education system. So how do you again tell us that you want us to get to a point where we'll be like a country like Korea, where basic education is so free and very ideally enhancing culture plus technology itself imparted in the children. So what I'm trying to say is that these are the kind of things that we're supposed to avert. Are going to actually cause Kenyans not even to agree to support the Vision 2060. And now heading to elections 2027. Yeah. Like we always say, I think in the scriptures, that there come a time when you begin to say things that you don't even believe or know what you're saying. And that's what the president is doing right now, because by the time it gets to 2027 and he begins to talk about the future and elections are coming around, and people who are already tired with you are already chanting one term and all these kind of things, you cannot change it with a future promise, yet the promises you made before you will not be fulfilling. That gives him an outright loss in the 2027 coming up elections. Okay. So that is where Kenya is. Kenya is tired. Business community is tired because the taxes are now hitting the ceiling, actually breaking the ceiling. Kenyans themselves, with the meager earnings that they are earning today, it is tax upon tax. If you go to a pay slip and you can see pay as you earn during the regime with former President Uhuru Kenyatta, they took it from 32%, I think, to 35%. Then you introduce other taxes, housing taxes, you know, and many other taxes that have been introduced within this regime. It tells you one thing. All those things have eroded a certain level of confidence. So how much more promises that you have not fulfilled, advising promises that you intend to accomplish 30 years later? I don't know whether he will be alive. Of course, we say systems will still continue, the state will still continue, people will be there. But if this kind of a mind is actually put into law, then you can imagine the kind of ruin we are going to cause on the generation that is coming up, the Gen Alphas. Okay. So I think it is time Kenyans stand up to the occasion and reject it to the core. All right.
Now, Mr. Kinodia, when you hear the president say that the journey to Singapore is actually taking root, is this wishful thinking, or can we actually actualize that sentiment?
Every time I hear the president mention Singapore, it's a bit nauseating. You wonder, is he the president of Kenya or the president of where? I don't know why he's so obsessed with Singapore, you know? And not just Singapore, he's always out there. That's why instead of creating jobs for Kenyan youth in this country, he's shipping them out as wage laborers or slaves, you know, to other countries. That's how you tell a leader has completely lost his bearing. That's how you tell that a leader has completely lost the capacity to lead. He's just plain incompetent. So when you hear these Singapore stories, to me, these are just fairy tales, you know? Yes. We were at the same point with a lot of these Asian countries before, but it is thanks to poor leadership of the kind he's exuding that you know, we are in the current place we are. And when I hear him prescribing the kind of so-called solutions he's prescribing, even a grade, you know, a grade 8 pupil in the CBC system can tell a lot of what he's talking about is just hogwash. He's just you know, building castles in the air. when you see a situation where somebody is always building stadiums, you know, in funny places where they are not even needed, building funny things in funny places, always looking for projects to start, almost relaunching projects multiple times, yet his own doctors are on strike, medics are on strike, people cannot access services in health institutions. You know, my brother talked about scrapping systems that are working. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, you know. If scrapping systems are working, replacing them with others, of course for personal benefit, him and his cronies. And it's a high time as Kenyans we just started, we just needed to start, it's a high time we started talking directly and saying, this president is a liar and he's a thief. You know, I noticed, I went to an event, and every time there's a blackout, now it's like tens of events, the moment lights are out, people just start talking his name and synonymizing it with, you know, he must go and he's a thief. How does he feel when the average Kenyan, the young people, the old people, in every situation keep referring to him with this, you know, this sort of attributes? And it's because he doesn't seem to care. His wanton theft of public resources is obvious. You know, he's publicizing, he's purportedly privatizing public institutions, but at the back there are huge machinations. The professor talked about it yesterday. He talked about, you know, weakening state institutions, public institutions, you know, corruption running rife. He said even the central bank when he was there, the treasury when he was there, he talked about himself personally being required to get involved in those kinds of, he called it stealing, you know, and corrupt schemes. This is what this president is becoming known for. So the next time he says Singapore, you know, you just feel like switching off that TV and he's left talking to himself, because what are you talking about? And you're not the president of Singapore. Kenyans elected you to be the president of Kenya. You're shipping out young people's jobs, you know, or rather you're shipping out our young people to go suffer out there. Your vision is a very sad, you know, especially from a job and economic prospects perspective. His vision is just a sad and hopeless sort of vision that tells you you can look to other countries out there. Why not improve this country? Why not get the systems running? Why not pay? When you don't pay contractors on time, when you don't pay people who've provided government services on time, when you don't pay tenders, what you're really doing is destroying more jobs in this country, destroying businesses and the core of this country. And he's creating a caste system where him and his cronies are at the top milking this country dry, and everybody else is suffering from their poor economic policies, their distraction with making money instead of governing, and the corruption that comes with it, and the incompetence and just poor lack of proper planning and governance in this country. He's going to go on record, sadly, as one of the most incompetent presidents we've ever had. And that is just a fact based on a lot of what is happening, because he seems to be giving solutions where there's no problem, and then where problems really exist, not offering solutions. His priorities are so lopsided that he doesn't match existing mission critical needs for this country with solutions that can actually fix them. So he babbles on during prime time about things that you don't just understand what he's talking about. So it's an unfortunate situation we are in, and again, this causes for the Kenyan citizen to really think twice about the kind of leadership they're offering this country, because you know, when you offer this kind of incompetent leadership that is even incapable of self-correction, you know, incapable of self-analysis and looking themselves in the mirror and saying, are we really doing the right thing? Can I hear? He talks of public, you know, one of his big things these days is doublespeak. He talks of public participation, like I said, but there's no public participation in what he's doing. You know, he talks of the environment and the green economy, but he's the one being taken to court every day. If you look at what the president is being taken to court, or the government is being taken to court over, it tells you where the priorities are lopsided. They're being taken to court for building non-essential, unwarranted, not needed, state facility inside what should be a conserved area, a forest no less, a green zone. So on one side he preaches green, but on the other side, because of greed, he does the exact opposite.
Okay.
So we have a problem in the leadership of this country. He seems incapable of self-correcting. He seems capable of self-analysis, and it seems there is nobody around him who's telling. The worst part of leadership is when it gets so bad that nobody can tell the emperor that he's naked, he has no clothes. When he gets to a point he cannot take advice, he gets to a point where people are afraid to tell him the truth, and he gets to a point where he's embarrassing himself daily with the kinds of things he's saying. Okay. Yesterday's speech was nothing short of an embarrassment, because it did not address the issues that Kenyans have. It's like he was concocting some scheme somewhere and then reducing it now to what he thinks Kenyans will find palatable, okay. And misrepresenting what he's really doing. Because the more you listen to that, you could tell there's some scheme behind this. You just can't tell what exactly he's up to. And this is just sad. It is just unfortunate, and Kenyans must start calling him out and calling this this government out, and the leaders he's given us, the CSs and other people must start calling them out. And our parliament is totally hamstrung, because he's captured it as well, okay. By all kinds of means, reportedly by threats, by bribery, by, strong arming people, all kinds of manipulations. The people's representatives are not doing their job, because they're the people who should be telling him this and summoning these government officials and holding them to account for their incompetence. Okay. Security in this country is not working. So many things are not working. The economy is not working. Education is not working. Medical is not working. Okay. And he's out there babbling about things, castles in the air. It's unfortunate. Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
Now, Mr. Mutamoidi, is this a leadership crisis, a policy crisis, or do they actually do they actually bear the same weight?
Categorically, it's a leadership crisis, because policies are there to be implemented by people, and if the people to implement, you are part of them. They are part of your system. Then I think when the head is sick, then the whole body is sick, like we always say, figuratively. So if you're not able to command a CS to implement certain policies, which you discuss in your cabinet meetings every now and then, you must be party to it, especially when it comes to avoiding the implementation of certain policies. Could be you're the one who is ordering them to shelve them, and that becomes a problem. Now, if I would do a small analysis of what the kind of president we have right now today, there's a time he said that he understands the ministries better than the ministers themselves, who actually manage those ministries. And when your leader says this, it means whatever you're capable of presenting as a service is already dislodged by whatever the smart leader has already declared that he can do better than you, even when he does his own duties in the highest office. So when it gets to that level, even presenting new ideas to such a person becomes a problem. Why? Because now their hands are tied. They are sitting in those offices with fear, because when you are addressing somebody who knows what you're about to say, then it means you will definitely stumble and stammer. And that's what is actually hindering his people from maximizing, exceeding the maximum potential in their service. And so when we have this, it means that it's a setback, and it's actually working against the vision that he would be having. He could be meaning well in saying that I understand. But you see, if you understand what I'm supposed to do better than I do, then let me know what I don't know, so I can be able to implement it. But when you use it to demean, belittle, and shame me, then it means I will start now avoiding you. And this, I believe, is what's happening in his leadership. And it has reached a point where he's so overwhelmed in running all these things the way Mo used to run even the office of an assistant chief from State House. Now, when you try to think that you can be able to manage that, you begin to overrun every other sector of the government. And I think if the president would just shelve this thing of a roadmap to, Singapore. And you see, like we rightly saying, is that, you see, an absentee parent, digressing a bit from what I've just explained, because I believe it's very clear, it's a leadership crisis. When a parent is absent, the easiest way to define his own children is by generalizing the perspective. Watoto wanakuanga hivi, or children are like this, because you have not spent time with your very own. So how do you know them? That's why I wouldn't be shocked when the president is all over Singapore, Vietnam, Japan, China, South Korea, all these countries. But they don't help us. One day in 2006, we were to we did a postmortem on why the draft constitution failed in 2005. Yeah. And personally, I brought this analogy when I did my submissions. I said, we are discussing a constitution for 45 tribes. So please, when I begin to discuss the Constitution of the United States, we don't suffer racism. We don't suffer the class consciousness. The class consciousness in the UK, please don't introduce this to Kenyans, because we are 45 tribes that love one another the way we are. There was no war by that time, of 2007, that implanted a certain evil mindset. What I'm trying to say is that anytime you begin to do things like others, then you miss the point. Because you are supposed to do it like for us. But since you are an absentee father, and you have seen the many tours that he makes out there, how much time does he have to understand, study, analyze in his quiet space of State House and understand what Kenyans are saying by now, save for going to the top of the rooftops of his vehicles and exchange words with the oppositions. The opposition would like you not to deliver. So when you miss out, instead of planning and implementing, you are busy, engaging in those rumbles. Okay. Then it means somebody is missing, you're losing, and you're doing it for the opposition. That's why they have a very beautiful handle to catch the president. So if the president would just shelve this, it might work maybe better for his re-election if he thinks that can work. But I think where Kenyans have reached, let me just explain, because this is where a majority of Kenyans are. They are claiming that it's no more beyond this term, because promises have now failed and turned into lies. It becomes a big problem. Okay. Yeah.
Now, Mr. John Kinodia, one would say it's okay. Let's talk about matters to do with the Vision 2060, as the head of state puts it. But one then again asks then, how do we prevent this from becoming another well-written policy document that never fully translates into the people's daily lives?
I found it odd that he's saying Vision 2030 is by and large unrealized, but instead of fixing that problem, he's creating yet another one. And you're right, the country has a history of all these policy documents, well-written, strategic papers and all these kinds of proclamations that don't go anywhere. It's because leaders have become so theoretical rather than practical. I noticed, Kenyans were decrying this week the blackouts that we're experiencing. Yeah. EPRA as a regulator has set 1.5 hours per month as the maximum we should have for blackouts in this country. We are operating at 8.39, which is so many multiples of that. And it seems that, one, that whole energy sector is run by the president's cronies, and now that is a fact. We've talked about it before. You know, everybody from the cabinet secretary to the state corporation leaders, you know, you see the whole, the principal secretary, the whole lineup are just tribesmen. But beyond that are accusations that have been made publicly, allegations that, you know, they're using these state corporations as milking schemes. Now we are seeing the economy being affected. We saw statistics and in today's paper that 60-something% of investors are no longer, or in industrial outfits are no longer investing in Kenya because they feel the cost of production is too high, the cost of electricity is too high, or other energy. And they feel that, you know, it's unreliable. So we are getting to a point where, to quote the paper today, we are deindustrializing as a country. So when somebody is talking about, you know, all this, you know, policy papers and policy pronouncements and new vision, you know, this and that, and, you know, the president is a very articulate man. So when he articulates, you know, nonsense, for lack of a better word, because when you listened to yesterday, you couldn't really tell what he was really articulating. What was he really saying? You know, he goes on and says about future generations and children, and they rely on us for this, and you know. And he's asking Kenyans to have a national conversation where he's already had a conversation with a few people and 2 professors and decided this is the way it should go. And he's just pushing it down the throat of Kenyans, and Kenyans are tired of this. So to answer your question, yes, we are tired of these policy proclamations and documents and all this stuff that gets put out there that has largely become just meaningless, because when the rubber meets the road, where is the strategic, you know, execution of the steps that are needed to get us to Vision 2030. You know, when a new leader comes in is when all these things are supposed to be put in line. So the president seems to be panicking because, you know, to quote a leader in this country who said the writing is on the wall, mene tekel urfasin, you know, he's seen that hand on the wall writing, and now he's trying to every sort of gimmick, and the president doesn't realize Kenyans don't need another gimmick, they don't need another vision, they don't need another plan, they don't need another building to come up, they don't need another affordable housing type scheme, they don't need another, you know, investment thing that, you know, everybody knows is just making money out of. Kenyans need good, sound, proper leadership based on principles of good governance, leaders who are actually not short-sighted but can see the future, have the prudence and the wisdom to get us to that future. The more the president talks, the more it is clear he's not the person to take us to that future. So I was struck by him talking of taking people to a future where you can be certain he'll not be a part of that future as a leader of this Kenya, because of the way he is leading this country, and because of the way he's tone deaf to the issues that beguile this country. Fix the power sector. On one side it is too expensive, on the other side it is totally unreliable. You know, get your hands out of this state corporations, get your people's cronies hands out of this state corporation. Stop appointing your friends as leaders in this country, cabinet secretaries who are just plain incompetent and you don't seem to deal with it. Now they've become an embarrassment to you. Get something working that you can actually be proud of and say, as a leader in Kenya, I fixed this problem, I led people to this. So all I hear is proclamations, and you know, he's become just a performance artist, you know, unfortunately, instead of a leader.
All right, and Mr. Mito Moraidi, the head of state says that the conversation is actually, you know, scheduled to start from August 12th. And how do we then ensure that this exercise, you know, reaches the ordinary mwananchi for you know, public participation?
I had alluded earlier that public representation in the government, although they're the ones who own the sovereign power that is delegated to the National Assembly, the judiciary, and the executive, their fair representation is actually in Parliament. Unfortunately, we have a Parliament that has not realized its power, has not realized its responsibility, has not realized itself, has subjected itself to the executive. And you see, when parliamentarians insubordinate themselves to the executive, then it means one thing. They have gone down together with the citizens. And when the citizens realize this, like what they have realized, that you are truly not representing our interest, then it means it's not going to be easy. So the conversation that he intends to have with Kenyans, having had a conversation with the two guys, and it becomes an issue that he wants us to, ponder over as 50 million people, then it means somebody is taking the other for a ride. And in this case, the president doesn't seem to understand that at this time, when you see somebody is very pissed off, is not the time you introduce, further further insults into what had already enraged the person. So Kenyans are very enraged. They're angry, and they're angry because of what you have greatly contributed to as a deputy president and as a president. Now, and also as a cabinet secretary by the time when he was a minister in the government of Moi Kibaki in the third regime. So when you tend to isolate a vision that you had actually established while in that first active government, and now you being at the helm of it, and you're not able to implement any, in fact you're leading most of them to ruin, then it becomes a problem. And so the trust he lost in the many promises that I've said, when you promise too much, it turns to a lie when nothing is accomplished. When Kenyans have now begun to see you as a liar in the previous promises, how do you expect them to trust you in the upcoming promises that are so eating into the future space? Because when you talk about 30 years, it means you want to introduce us to something you know too well that you will not be party to implementing, but you want to build the financial resource that's supposed to implement that whole thing. I mentioned something about leadership suffering something we call individualism, and that individualism is what has actually brought down the economy. Look at the health, the energy sector, which I also actually mentioned, that in the former regime, they disallowed having wind power or even enlarging the wind power field so that the power that is tapped from the wind is actually entrenched into the grid, the power grid. They refuse to do that, literally. Why? Because they want to continue selling power to Kenya Power. In such a blackout, you want to sell power generated by fuel like oil. Yet, in 2010, the United Nations Environmental Programs Secretary, Achim Steiner, had done a research with his team and discovered that Turkana alone could produce 5,000 megawatts. Yet Kenyans, if they would have spent power in industries and also have our power lights on and cooking with electricity at the same time, we would only spend 3,900 megawatts that time. Okay, but you see, Turkana alone is windy, producing 5,000. So how much more the whole of the northern Kenya? How much more the arid and the semi-arid areas we talk about is all about solar as a source of energy? We're not capitalizing on that because somebody maybe inherited a company here, maybe a company like generates power here that belonged to one of the senior politicians, either Africa, maybe the ones along Juja Road, Thika Road, this kind of things this kind of culture is what we want to end. That is so selfish. The other day, the oil was declared that is not there. Yet there was a time the same president declared that we are able to harvest or dig up 200,000 barrels of oil every single day, generating 2 billion shillings daily. Then, after a trip to UK, coming back, our oil is not acceptable in the market, and we're also losing 2 billion shillings daily. You know, when you look at the math, it tells you something is happening, and it must be an individual. Now, when we are into this 2026-25 politics, the acquisition of a company like Gulf, which belongs to a former candidate in the gubernatorial race in Mombasa, Mohamed Shabal. Today we hear the partnership has a leadership in it, and a declaration has already been made that yes, now we have oil in Turkana. Is it Gulf, a company that is privately owned, supposed to run our national resources, or is it the National Oil Corporation? So that individualism is what is actually killing this country.
Pretty much.
And you know one thing? Until Kenyans replace this thing called, kill this thing we call public-private partnership, PPP. That's the time Kenyans will begin to experience the benefits of having a government. Because today a government is for the people who are loaded, who are moneyed, and that's why people are working so hard to steal. They steal a lot of money so that I can be able to buy shares in company A, company B, company C.
Fair enough.
That's what is happening. So I think the president has a lot to do. Together with Kenyans, we need to take our stand and make it even firm than ever before.
Okay, fair enough. Now, Mr. John Kinodia, I can see we are ahead of time, but I want to raise your thoughts on this particular matter. Now, the president says that, you know, the new development charter, you know, should be written by the people themselves. We've actually seen, you know, how public participations have been conducted. Just the other day, we actually saw, you know, Treasury CS, that is John Badi, say that they have done public participation in regards to, you know, to the finance bill of 2026, 2027, and one would then ask, what would you know, a genuine public participation look like, even as we get up for the conversations on August 12th about the Vision 2060?
Firstly, I think the president is talking about a national conversation, but he's having it with himself and his cronies. So it is very clear that under this particular president's rule, there has been an undermining of the whole concept of public participation. The law is very clear. The processes are very clear. How Parliament enacts laws, and the process therein is very clear. But every time you find the president abusing his power, abusing the control he has over Parliament, abusing the national institutions like, you know, the ministries. You see cabinet secretaries, like you said, you know, purporting that there's public participation, but there's what they call public participation falls way short of what is expected by constitutional and other policy and process standards. So the president seems not to believe in proper governance. It's unfortunate. So it's sad when it's him always undermining it and then coming up and, you know, purporting, and that's why I call it double speak. He speaks from both sides of his mouth. Purports to be doing something that he knows very well he's not doing. Purports to stand for something that he knows very well he does not stand for. Seems to do the exact opposite of what he claims to do, and that's why people now are calling him deceptive. He's just somebody who cannot be trusted. He's somebody, and he has the power. It's one thing when somebody is not able to deliver because they don't have the resources, they don't have the power, they don't have, you know, what it takes. But this is the person who has the sole accountability in this country for how this country is governed, and again and again he seems to fail at that. He seems to govern with such incompetence, and again he seems to fail in consulting the people who elected him to power, and that is going to cost him either way going forward, because we keep talking about 2027, but the issues that we are seeing are immediate, and that's why you see, I was watching, you know, a different station where the managing editors and other key leaders of that station come together, and we're talking about the issues in this country where there's just sheer incompetence in how the country is being run, and it's like we're talking, nobody seems to care, nobody listens. So I think the president, especially the next time he needs to make us an address like this, needs to steer away from this kind of thing, you know. Now he's starting another distraction, he's starting another expenditure, and the country is broke in so many ways, yet we need to fix these problems because people are not getting served in hospitals, people are not being paid, there's so many crises, and then he's out there doing what is clearly discretionary and something that's not mission critical. You know, this patient is in ICU, you don't start buying burgers for them. You know, we don't need burgers when you're in ICU. You know, you need healthy food, you need to be fed through a tube or whatever it takes to keep you alive, and he's busy talking about amenities that are just vanity. This country cannot afford the kind of vanity this president seems to have. Fair and enough. He doesn't get it.
Okay, okay. Now, even as you end up, Mr. Mito Morethi, under 1 minute kindly, you know, the Kenya Senate is once again considering, proposal to strip the IBC's duty to stream polling station results live, even as they announced in the Election Laws Amendment Bill of 2026, and is co-sponsored by Senate Majority Leader, that is Aaron Cheruiyot, and Minority Leader Stewart Matsai. What do you make of that?
It's balderdash. It's nonsense. And you're talking to people who have experienced the wonders of transparency. Yeah. People who have seen how elections work better. Yeah. Like I said, we are through social transformation in terms of relations, one with another in the 45 tribes. Killing or totally making extinct these ethnic differences because they always come up during elections. And the transparency itself has allowed Kenyans to realize that when the portals are open to the public the people are able to monitor whatever they have been able to do during the day of voting. So when somebody says that it should be now made opaque, no one can see from out there, and that person is speaking from the government side, it means they can have access while the Kenyan citizens don't have access. This is going to augur well with the Kenyans. And you see, the failure in leadership is when such a motion is moved by a leader who is within your reach as the head of state, and you don't caution such person because of the dangers that lay ahead, simply because you have a personal interest, it becomes a problem. And that's why we're saying that the president should actually crack the whip on people who are going to cause his already precarious campaigns. Situation that he's actually standing on. And being in such precipice political, I would say, which will be judged in August by the vote, then it means he is supposed to be tough and ensure that he is now having his feet on a safer ground.
Fair enough. Now, Mr. John Kino, they want to pick a mind on this particular matter quick first, under 1 minute kindly. The Senate is actually, once again reconsidering, proposal to strip the IBC of duty of live streaming, the polling station live results. And of course, it was announced is they're announced is the Election Laws Amendment Bill of 2026, and is co-sponsored by Senate Majority Leader Aaron Cheruiyot and the Minority Leader, that is Stewart Matsai. And of course, one would argue that the IEBC at the end of the day, they are actually the sole body that is actually mandated to to announce the final results. So what do you make of the live streaming of results?
So we have a challenge that everybody in Kenya today knows that the Senate, Parliament as a whole, is captured by the executive. So they are not able to be independent. They are not able to work in the best interest of the electorate who elected them. So again, this is just the president seeming to interfere with the independent electoral body. The timing is suspicious. How it's being done is suspicious. What exactly is the benefit of saying you cannot broadcast live? These are the things that lead to the kinds of crises we've seen in the past. Again, if the system ain't broke, don't fix it. We have a challenge when it comes to, again, tone deafness on the side of leadership. The Majority Leader is one of the closest allies to the president. So are, you know, those who are in charge of both, you know, houses in parliament. So we have a challenge in that the president seems to be now interfering with the IEBC ability. Why wouldn't somebody want results to be, you know, broadcast live? Okay. You know, why would somebody not want that kind of transparency? Okay. We need to avoid those things, especially at this time when we're just at the corner of an election, okay, and it smells of, you know, dirty games and all kinds of subterfuge that the president and his cronies have become known for. Pretty much.
John Kinodia is a governance expert. He was joining us this morning on that particular conversation. Of course, I was joined also by Mr. Muito Muredi, who's a political strategist and analyst as well. We were trying to make sense of President's speech yesterday when he was actually addressing the nation. And is it really a conversation we should be having, or are they playing charm offensive? All right, that's a conversation we were having right here on the Leadership Challenge Show. My name is Martin Masharo, sitting in for one Reverend Felix Kavoy. And of course, just in case you missed out on that particular conversation, our streams were up on Facebook and as well as on YouTube. All right, have yourself a blessed and productive day ahead. God bless, and as always, let's do this again when God says we do.